Welcome to this explainer on directed energy systems. Today, we are going to completely separate the Hollywood hype from grounded reality, because let's face it, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So to cut through all that noise, everything we're covering today is a deep dive based strictly on open source data, publicly available information, and primary source investigations from the Autonomous Archive. Let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, science fiction meets reality. 2, how directed energy works. 3, global military programs. 4, operational limits and weather. 5, human effects and law. And finally, 6, the accountability problem.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Science Fiction Meets Reality.
So, I want you to ask yourself, when you hear the phrase military lasers, do you immediately picture futuristic blasters from your favorite sci-fi movie? Or do you think of actual physical hardware sitting on a battlefield today? Right? For a long time, it was absolutely the first one. But you guys, we have officially crossed a major threshold.
The truth is, these systems are no longer speculative. They are very, very real. But, and this is a big but, their maturity is wildly uneven. We're definitely not looking at some uniform class of fully deployed superweapons just yet. It's more like a mixed bag. Some are fully operational right now, like laser dazzlers used to disrupt sensors, while others, well, they're still highly experimental prototypes just sitting in a lab somewhere.
Moving on to Section 2, how directed energy works.
To really grasp this, we need a major shift in how we even think about combat. We are literally talking about weaponizing the electromagnetic spectrum itself. You're not firing a physical bullet powered by chemical explosives anymore. Instead, you're transmitting concentrated energy at the literal speed of light, specifically to disrupt or destroy a target. It's wild to think about.
Now, you absolutely have to understand the fundamental difference between the two main types of systems out there. High-energy lasers, think of them like a giant magnifying glass, focusing the sun. They burn a specific pinpoint spot on a target until it physically, structurally fails, or just bursts into flames. High-powered microwaves, on the other hand, act way more like an invisible net. They cast this broad electromagnetic field designed to totally scramble, shut down, or completely fry the internal electronics of a target, like, say, a whole swarm of drones, across a much wider area.
All right, Section 3, global military programs.
So, who actually has this stuff right now? Looking at the spectrum of readiness worldwide, the U.S. Odin system is a fielded optical dazzler currently being used by the Navy. The U.S. Helios, though, that's still a prototype undergoing early ship integration. Over in the UK, their Dragonfire system has reached contracted production, and Israel has recently made claims of initial operational delivery for its Iron Beam system. Things are moving fast for sure, but always remember, in development absolutely does not mean ready for combat.
And if we want to see the financial reality of this, just look at the U.S. Army's fiscal year 2026 budget trajectories. We are talking millions of dollars heavily prioritizing short-range air defense and high-energy laser prototypes. Literally, over $430 million requested just for the DE-MH SHORAD vehicle-mounted laser prototype alone. Governments are taking this incredibly seriously, and these massive budgets really reflect that transition from mere research to realistic prototyping.
That brings us to Section 4, operational limits and weather.
Okay, this right here is exactly where the Hollywood hype often falls apart. Yes, firing a laser is conceptually amazing, but you know what? It simply won't work well in thick fog, heavy rain, or even just dust, because all of that scatters the beam. You absolutely have to have a direct line of sight, and you need what's called dwell time, meaning you have to keep that laser perfectly steady on a moving target for several seconds just to burn through it. Oh, and perhaps the biggest hurdle, you need absolutely massive thermal cooling systems just to keep the machine from literally melting itself down after it fires.
You've probably seen those flashy headlines claiming laser weapons cost practically nothing to fire, right? Like, a shot costs only a few dollars. Well, that's highly misleading. Sure, the electricity for a single shot might only cost a few bucks, but that completely ignores the life cycle cost. Integrating the complex sensors, those massive thermal cooling units I just mentioned, optical replacements, platform modifications, all of that actually costs millions upon millions of dollars.
Because of these severe weather and cooling limits, lasers and microwaves are not replacing traditional weapons anytime soon, not a chance. Instead, what military planners are actually aiming for is called a mixed effector architecture. Basically, directed energy just becomes a brand new layer of defense working alongside conventional missiles and guns. Think about it, if it's pouring rain, use a missile. But if the sky is totally clear and you want to save money intercepting a cheap drone, that's when you use the laser.
Let's dive into Section 5, Human Effects and Law.
95 gigahertz. Remember that number because this is the exact frequency used by the U.S. active denial system. It's a non-lethal millimeter wave technology designed specifically for area denial. What it does is penetrate just the very outer layer of human skin, causing rapid superficial heating and intense pain to compel people to move away. As you can probably guess, this brings up some massive policy and public legitimacy questions regarding the use of pain compliance.
Now, international law is already trying to govern these designs. For instance, the 1995 Protocol 4 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons strictly outlaws the intentional design and use of blinding lasers on the battlefield. It doesn't ban all lasers, right? But it does draw a very hard ethical line at deliberately causing permanent blindness. So any new systems coming out have to pass rigorous weapons reviews to make sure they strictly comply with these standards.
We also need to address anomalous health incidents, which you've probably heard referred to in the media as Havana syndrome. Based on our source's comprehensive 2025 intelligence community assessment, we have to impartially note that foreign adversary involvement was judged as very unlikely for most of these cases. A symptom pattern alone just doesn't prove a directed energy weapon was used, and crucially, the research emphasizes that providing medical care for affected personnel must always remain separate from the complexities of intelligence attribution.
And finally, Section 6, the accountability problem.
To figure out what's actually real in this space, we have to rely on what's called the verification ladder. Basically, you can't just take a defense contractor's shiny press release at face value. A system has to climb this entire rigorous ladder, going from just being physically possible, to working in a lab, to being integrated on an actual vehicle, to being funded, fielded, and then finally actually used in a real operation. Too often, the media totally confuses Step 2 with Step 6.
To manage these systems safely, governments desperately need a continuous life cycle accountability system. What does that mean? Well, it means demanding minimum public accountability. We're talking about publishing unclassified summaries of how these weapons actually affect humans, showing the real test records, including all those times the lasers fail in the rain, tracking civilian harm data, and ensuring that governments actually have real access to the proprietary source code that's running these machines.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As we start moving away from physical bullets and step into this new realm of invisible, algorithm-driven energy beams, how do we legally audit and control the future of warfare when the operational reality is entirely hidden behind a wall of corporate software and government secrecy? It's a huge question, and one we all really need to be asking as science fiction officially becomes our daily reality. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.